So in our last session, we talked about accepting the role of ambassador, that's part of the battle plan to save the world. And that we've got the CIA's plan where you're ambassador to the embassy, and we've got the God's plan where you're his ambassador representing God. But there's some good news and bad news to that, is that when you're an ambassador and you represent something that people don't like, then you get targeted. And one of the things you're going to have to decide, whether it's in God's world or whether it's in this world, is are you going to be a hard target or are you going to be a soft target? So we're going to talk about this concept a little bit before we get into actually the terrorist method of operation. Because the terrorist method of operation will talk about things that people do to target you. But part of that depends too on whether or not you're a hard target or you're a soft target. So to put it in just a quick layman's term, if you decide that you want to assassinate someone in this world as a terrorist, then you like to find the easiest target. So you look for easy targets. So that's a soft target. And then sometimes though, you go, hey, is it worth the challenge to try to do a hard target? And sometimes it is. So when you think of a hard target, I mean, obviously look at the United States president. You know, we've got these giant armored cars. We've got Secret Service everywhere. We got protective intelligence everywhere. We have literally thousands of people working or inputting into movements of the president. Becomes a hard target. Ambassadors. Fairly hard target. Unfortunately, sometimes ambassadors are killed. And Ambassador Chris Stevens was in Benghazi in 2012. And you can go back and read that story. But that embassy, for lots of reasons, was overrun by terrorists, and Ambassador Stevens was killed. I had a friend of mine, Nick Rowe. He was a counterpart. I have told you I worked in Manila. The book says that Vail talks about operations in Manila have been going on forever. Security assistance operations, well documented in the book, that we were supporting the president there forever. And President Marcos stood for democracy, but in that country we had a communist insurgency that was killing people and trying to overthrow the government. We had the Islamic Moros kidnapping Americans, up in Mindanao. And my counterpart there, Nick Rowe, who was a colonel and worked for the Army and did training. Unfortunately, Nick Rowe, as he was coming to work in 1989, in April of 89, was ambushed and killed as he was going to work. He was in an armored car, but unfortunately, the circumstances ended up in his death. So once you become a representative, you become potentially a hard target or a soft target. Obviously, what we'd like to think is nobody really wants to be a soft target, because then you're going, okay, this is really easy. And we don't want that to happen. And that was the great thing about working in the Philippines, was that as an operations officer, you felt like you were helping people every day, trying to overcome, a major insurgency of the New People's Army, who was communist trying to overthrow. And then you had, the Moros, the Islamic extremists, and you're trying to assist getting Americans released. So there was just a lot going on in a short time frames in a very close environment. And I'll mention one story to you. This is a unique story. When I was there in the Philippines, I enjoyed going there. And the book Vail also says that there was a time when people were training the Mrs. Aquino's people and Mrs. Aquino took over, and this goes back to my, when we talked earlier on about, these foggy foes, and I showed you the picture of Mobutu. Well, Marcus was really the same way, in that we had been supporting him. Then one of his people who had been against him tried to come back into the country, Ninoy Aquino. And Nino Aquino was getting off the airplane and on a tarmac, which should be a hard target. And unfortunately, as he got off that plane, returning after a period of exile, he was executed. And then his wife, Mrs. Aquino, later became president. And so while some training was going on there, I stayed out in a little concrete 8 by 12 little shack out in the middle of nowhere. And while I was out there, I had a little bathroom and everything. And so one night I went to take my shower, and I come out of the shower. And as I came out of the shower, I just turned and I look, it's only 15 feet away maybe over there. And there on my dresser, all I had in that whole room was a bed, and one dresser and a bathroom. That was it. It was out, I'm out in the middle of nowhere. And I had, a bunch of geckos that lived in there with me that crawled around at night, and you'd see them. You just hope they didn't crawl into your mouth while you're sleeping. But I see this thing on my dresser that I've never seen before. And I go, what is that? And it's kind of about the size, this, about my hand, like a cupcake, a big cupcake. And it's sitting up there, and I don't know what that is. And so as I just took another step, I'm still about 15 feet away or so. I noticed it kind of moved. It kind of went, I go, oh, what is that? And so I look a little closer, and I see it's kind of on the back of the dresser, and I took another step forward. And as I came forward, whatever it was moved forward towards the dresser, coming towards the front, coming towards me. And I'm going, I don't know what that is, but that's not normal. You don't normally go towards something and then it comes towards you, it normally goes away. And as I'm looking a little closer, I realize that's a big tarantula. That's a really big tarantula. And I go, wow, I can put up with the geckos, but I can't put up with the tarantula. And so what I did was I decided, okay, I've got my towel here. I'm just gonna go forward, and I'm going to, smash that tarantula. I'm not really concerned about it. So as I start to move forward, I see the little tarantula move. I'm probably about, 10 feet away from him now. And I just learned a very valuable lesson at this point. I tell you now, tarantulas, it turns out, can jump. And they can jump about 10 to 15 feet. I didn't know that, but I know it now, and I've researched a little bit, and the tarantulas in the Philippines can jump. And so as I went forward in that last little 10-foot circle, he decided that was his territory. And that tarantula came leaping off the dresser at me as I'm going towards him. And I would like to tell you that, I just reached up and grabbed him and, smashed him. But I can't really say that, because what happened was it caught me so much by surprise that he is flying at me now, that as I backpedaled and probably did yell out a little bit like, what is this? I'm going backwards, and he lands on the ground, and he's looking right at me, and he's swiveling around a little bit, and he's about 3 feet away from me now. And it's kind of like he realizes I retreated, and now I realize, once I got calmed down, I'm still standing there with my towel, that tarantula just attacked me. And so I go, I'm not going to put up with this. And so I took that towel, and before he could move again, I whapped that towel on him, and then I jumped over there, and I went crunch, 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 and I could feel it crunching under my feet. but I had defeated that tarantula. And I was sitting there shaking, but I was excited that I had won that battle. And the reason I tell you that story is because to be a hard target or a soft target, we have to decide what we're defending against, and we have to know about it. And to be honest with you, I didn't know about that tarantula, that he could jump that far. But once I knew he could jump that far, then I knew if I saw another one again, I'd have a different plan of attack. So the same thing comes up with, are you a hard target or are you a soft target? So I've already explained to you a hard target in the CIA mode. Hard target in CIA mode is you get these armored cars, you get guns, you get bulletproof vests, you get intelligence, you get the ability to, intercede and stop things, you get the ability to question people, you get the ability to have helicopters and rings of security. You get a huge outer ring that's protecting you. Nobody can get through the outer ring, whether it be the guards or walls. Then you may have a middle ring, which now, the buildings are getting with higher fences and higher walls and more people. And then you're probably going to have an inner ring where that's the people that are traveling with the president, or that's your little group that keeps you safe. And it makes each ring becomes more difficult to get into. So the more rings you have, the harder target you are. So all I'm telling you is once you've accepted the job to be Christ's ambassador, you became a target. Because if you're just sitting around doing nothing for God's mission, you're not much of a problem. People become problems once they become active. People become problems once they're changing people's minds and hearts. That's the whole theory behind covert action, changing minds and hearts. Once you start doing that, now you become a problem. And so what I'm telling you is yes, God wants you as his ambassador. You are God's ambassador, but you also now have made yourself a target. And so I want you to become a hard target, not a soft target. And to be a hard target, it's really kind of simple. We talked about it earlier. Ephesians 6:10 through 18 says that when people are they're throwing all these arrows at you, or they're shooting all these guns at you, or they're trying to annihilate you, that you have to put on the full armor of God. And the more active you get in church, the more you'll realize, and it took me a long time to understand this, that the devil does start targeting, because remember what I told you, he's in charge of this world. He's not liking it. And so you have to go back, and I just want to review these really quickly with you, but I want you to go back and read them in Ephesians. You have to be able to have the belt of truth, the breastplate of righteousness, the shoes of peace, the shield of faith, the helmet of salvation, and you have to have the sword of the Spirit. I already told you that. That's your only offensive weapon. We have to have that as our weapon. And Ephesians 6:19 through 20 says, pray also for me, that whenever I speak, words may be given me, so that I will fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains. Pray that I may declare it fearlessly as I should. So we can't fear being God's ambassador, because remember what I told you. In the end, we win. The devil is expelled into the pit. But right now, as we're here and we're being active ambassadors, we're going to be targeted. And now I want to talk to you. We're going to transition a little bit to what is that target? How do they target us? And what's their methodology in targeting us?